Hi there and welcome to the channel, and in this video I'll share some more of my summer reading, and this time it's the turn of Knut Hamsun's Victoria, published in 1898. Now this is the third of Hamsun's novels I've read, the first of them being Hunger, his debut, justly celebrated as one of the greatest novels ever written. This is essential reading for any serious student of literature. Psychological derangement on the mean streets of Christiania, or Oslo as it is now. This introduced a battery of narrative techniques that became staples of modernism and was influential on both Franz Kafka and Samuel Beckett. The episode in Molloy, where the character sucks upon a stone to try and appease his hunger, is a direct nod to a similar incident in Hamsun's novel. Then I read Dreamers, which had a fairy tale air, a very slender novel, but very beautiful too. And then Victoria, which was something different once again, because this is a love story. Okay, so this novel tells the story of Johannes, a miller's son, and Victoria, the daughter of a wealthy family who reside on an adjoining property whose residence is known as the castle. And this family basically used Johannes and his mother and father as servants, calling upon them whenever they need something done. And this is evident in the first chapter, where Johannes, who's age 14 at this point, and Victoria is 10, is summoned to the castle to row Victoria and her friends across to an island in a lake. And I'll just read you a little bit from this opening. Johannes met the young people on the pier and helped them into the boat. He knew them already, the castle children and their friends from the town. Nearly all of them wore high boots for wading, but Victoria, who had on a pair of light dancing shoes, and who in any case was no more than 10, had to be carried ashore when they reached the island. "Shall I carry you?" asked Johannes. "Allow me," said Otto, a town gentleman of some 15 summers, and lifted her in his arms. Johannes stood and watched her being carried well clear of the water, and heard her words of thanks. Then Otto said over his shoulder, "Keep an eye on the boat, whatever your name is." "It's Johannes," answered Victoria. "Yes, he'll keep an eye on the boat." He was left behind. The others headed for the centre of the island with baskets in their hands for collecting birds' eggs. He stood for a while pondering. He would dearly have liked to go with the others, and they could simply have pulled the boat ashore. Too heavy? It was not too heavy, and taking hold of the boat, he pulled it up a few inches more. He heard the group of young people laughing and chattering as they moved away. All right, goodbye for now. But they could perfectly well have taken him with them. He knew of nests that he could have taken them to see. Curious concealed holes in the rock, harbouring birds of prey with tufts on their beaks. Once he had even seen a weasel. He shoved the boat off and began to row round to the other side of the island. He had covered a considerable distance when a shout hailed him. "Row back! You're frightening the birds." "I only wanted to show you where the weasel lives," he answered diffidently. He waited for a moment. "And then we could smoke out the adder's nest. I've got matches." No answer. He turned round, rowed back to the landing place, and pulled the boat out of the water. When he grew up, he would buy an island from the Sultan and forbid all access to it. A gunboat would guard its shores. "Your Excellency," the slaves would report, "there's a boat aground on the reef. It's breaking up. The young people in it will perish." "Let them perish," he replies. "Your Excellency, they are shouting for help. We can still save them. And there's a lady in white among them." "Save them," he orders in a voice of thunder. Then he sees the castle children again after many years, and Victoria throws herself at his feet and thanks him for saving her life. "There's nothing to thank me for," he replies. "I have only done my duty. Go freely wherever you wish in my lands." And then he orders the gates of the castle to be opened, and the party is served with food from golden plates, and 300 dusky slave girls sing and dance the whole night long. But when the castle children have to leave, Victoria cannot bear it and falls prostrate, sobbing before him in the dust, because she loves him. "Let me stay here, Your Excellency. Do not reject me. Make me one of your slave girls." He began walking rapidly toward the centre of the island, trembling with emotion. Yes, yes, he would save the castle children. Who could tell? Perhaps by now they were lost on the island. Perhaps Victoria was stuck fast between two boulders and could not get out. All he had to do was stretch out his arm and set her free. But when he caught up with them, the children looked at him in amazement. Had he abandoned the boat? A rather long quotation to be sure, but what we have here in microcosm are the major themes of the novel. Firstly, the class barriers. Secondly, Johannes's love for Victoria, which we learn later in the chapter is reciprocated and which will endure throughout the course of each of their lives. And thirdly, the way in which when Johannes's heart is wounded, it fires his imagination, fires his ambition, and over the course of Johannes's life, this wounded heart will pour forth a torrent of poetry and prose, all of it dedicated to Victoria, as he becomes a celebrated author and begins to move in the same social circles as her. They will encounter each other upon occasion, but sadly, their union is fated never to happen. Okay, so that is Knut Hamsun's Victoria. I strongly recommend this novel, as indeed I recommend all of Hamsun's writings. Now, before I go, I wish to say a little more about the presentation of childhood and love in this novel, and I wish to do so by reference to another masterpiece I recently read, Turgenev's First Love. What really struck me after reading Victoria about First Love is the way in which the middle-aged narrator's recollections of his childhood are encased in a protective shell, which preserves them in extraordinary detail, but also protects him from re-experiencing those pains and sorrows of that first love. Whereas in Victoria, there is no protective shell. There is no clear line between childhood and adulthood, and the wounds that are opened in childhood never close. And that really made me think, as a middle-aged man looking back at my life, which kind of perspective am I capable of adopting? Can I think about the past without once again experiencing those pangs? Or am I someone who is just still suffering all those wounds from my childhood? I'd have to say, on balance, I'm very much more of the Hamsun school. And for that reason, I was moved much more by Victoria than by First Love, despite the wonderful artistry on display in both. Okay, I've said all I wish to say, so now all that remains is to bid you farewell in the customary fashion. So, until the next time, be safe, be strong, nanu nanu.